Morning, everyone. I hope you're all ready for the part 2 of the conference. Such a beautiful day today, so hope you're all feeling good and ready to go. So we are doing the Belonging in Libraries conference, part 2. My name is Tara Hart, and I'm a Library Service Officer at Monash University. On behalf of Caval and the Customer Services and Collaboration Network, CSCN, I'd like to welcome everyone to this second and final webinar in a series of 2. To start us off, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands across Australia where we live, learn and work. We acknowledge and celebrate the inherent strengths of Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander and other First Nations peoples and communities and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, sky and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. I would also like to welcome and extend my respects to First Nations peoples attending today. I am joining you from Bunurong country and I encourage you to share which country you're attending from in the chat. If you have any technical questions during the session, please type them into the chat and the Caval team will assist you. If you have any questions for the speakers throughout the webinar, please submit them through the Zoom Q&A function at the bottom of your window, and we'll get to as many as possible at the end of the event. Through the Q&A function, you can also see the questions of others, upvote questions, and/or add comments to existing questions as appropriate. Like I said at the first of these 2 webinars, we, as library staff, want staff, students, and the wider community around us to feel welcome, included, and like they belong in our library spaces, both virtual and physical. This sense of belonging is for everyone, irrespective of their background, sex, gender, religion, race, etc. The projects presented in today's and the last of these webinars have shown a great light on some of the initiatives you are all working on across your workplaces, and there's been a nice buzz in the chat around them, which has been great to see. Please keep this up, and with this sense of belonging and collegiality in mind, we encourage you to keep the conversation in the chat and Q&A courteous and respectful. With that, and on behalf of everyone here today, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our first speaker, Claire O'Hanlon, who will speak about how we can build belonging for the LGBTQIA+ communities in our libraries. Claire is a client experience librarian at the Deakin University Library. If you would like to know more about any of today's speakers, you can visit the event webpage, which we will link to in the chat. Welcome, Claire.
Yeah, so I'll be sharing some experiences, resources, and tips for building LGBTIQ+ belonging, especially for trans and gender diverse people in academic libraries by challenging mis and disinformation and discrimination and modelling care and community. And these opinions that I'll express are my own, not my employer's, and have been informed by lived experiences and research. I do also want to acknowledge that I'm presenting from the lands of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to them and to all First Nations elders, past and present, and extend that respect to and express solidarity with any First Nations people joining us today. I would also like to extend this respect and solidarity solidarity with Palestinian people. And I don't feel like I can talk about belonging and inclusion, nor First Nations justice in libraries without addressing the silence and misinformation that we've been seeing around this topic. And yeah, I recommend learning from many Palestinian people, First Nations people, and Jewish people in Australia and around the world who have been talking about this. There's a lot of work out there. And I also recommend learning from First Nations academics like Sandy O'Sullivan around the colonial project of gender. So this is an overview of what I'll cover. Just to start, I was happy to see that there was at least a small mention of HIV, AIDS, mis and disinformation in this rapid review in the health of literature in the health library context, but it would be great to see more and to see some engagement with mis and disinformation about trans people. And there was also no mention that I could see related to queer or trans people and the mis and disinformation about us in this article about the topic, on the topic on university libraries in Australia. And it was promising to see that data was collected from gender diverse people in this study about libraries and media literacy education, but sad to see that the small number of gender diverse respondents meant that their responses were excluded from the analysis. So there's more work to be done. And there is some really good work being done and led by community to challenge myths and disinformation about and discrimination against trans people in Australia in recent years that we can learn from and share these resources with our communities. We can also collaborate with them to develop even more resources. Um, uh, Yes, and it was also good to see this recent call survey and report, and some of the key takeaways for me and the organisers were that more support is needed for trans and gender diverse staff um, in libraries, and perhaps particularly for library staff who are both neurodivergent and trans or gender diverse. Uh, So we have a reparative metadata project using Homosaurus at Deakin Library, and it's been a great collaboration between metadata and discovery librarians, who I've seen one of them in the audience today. So they have the technical expertise and between more front-facing librarians like me and like most of us here today, who have lived, or many of us, who have lived experience or subject matter expertise. And this project was rewarding and empowering in many ways, and I'm really proud of what we've achieved so far, but especially in making trans inclusive resources easier to find. But it was complex and a little bit frustrating in some ways too. And there are many limitations that reinforce for me that cataloging with Homosaurus is one relatively small thing we can do. But we really need to do more, which is kind of why I've put it at the start of the continuum. Um, the Homosaurus project unearthed a huge amount of collections that I and others with lived experience would not have been able to find as easily without using outdated and somewhat offensive language. And we've started to share some of these collections in blog posts and social media posts. And I wanted to give a shout out to Deakin Library's communications coordinators, Amy and Tash, who have included LGBTIQ Days of Significance in our library communications playbook and have been proactively gathering content for them in collaboration with me and other colleagues. And I would also wanted to note that one of the most popular blog posts among LGBTIQ communities on campus has been one about celebrating neurodiversity, which links to the core report. Book displays are another really important way that we can share collections and help people find pride, belonging, and solidarity, and can and arguably should be really simple and subtle. It's good for many reasons. And I also wanted to give a shout out to another colleague, Sarah Fennelly's work designing inclusive characters for communications and learning resources. I have learned from and applied punk pedagogy and pedagogies of care and community and belonging to my teaching in the curriculum across many disciplines and outside the curriculum on the front line and with LGBTIQ student wellbeing colleagues, academics, diversity and inclusion colleagues, pride networks, student union groups, working groups, and for honours and graduate research students over the years. And there have been a few moments at both Deakin and La Trobe where I've kind of felt like an informal, unofficial librarian for LGBTIQ communities on campus and online. And this is not an entirely unique experience for LGBTIQ staff in libraries.
Hi, Claire, just your 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So I've created and openly licensed workshops and resources to inspire a critical approach to information gathering and information citation and inclusive citation practices, especially for honours students. One of them thanked me for this in the acknowledgement section of their thesis. I've delivered a few versions of this workshop on navigating positionality, power and politics in education research as well. It would be great to see some collaboration in libraries and with others across the university to help create resources to support researchers' online safety and privacy, as many may be at risk of doxing and other harm given their research topics in the current climate. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the Deakin Library's exhibitions and public programs team, especially for their Rainbow Connections exhibition, which is closing soon. There's still a bit of time to come and see it. It's a great example of informal education outside the curriculum that we can do. And also of showcasing non-traditional research outputs. There is definitely still a need for staff training in libraries around including and supporting trans and gender diverse people in particular. And this chapter from a recent book, which is amazing, resonated really strongly with the training that I've experienced in the higher ed sector. And the closest to the good example that I've highlighted here was a version of it, the Dewey Really Need This presentation that I gave to Bendigo campus colleagues in collaboration with student wellbeing colleagues who delivered the LGBTIQ training. And yeah, we wanted to help contextualize that training and bring some practical library examples to help colleagues implement it. I highly recommend checking out Sam Searle's work on advocating for the use of preferred names in library systems and other systems at universities. And I also wanted to note this shout out in Eve Rees's memoir that vividly illustrates the powerful impact that changes to online infrastructure can have. And speaking, I know changes to physical infrastructure may be a little bit hard, but given how many questions I'm sure we all get about where the bathrooms are, it is really important to work to create more inclusive bathrooms and also to know, to be inclusive when we get that question. And there are some changes that we can make to signage and facilities within bathrooms if we can't change the bathrooms themselves. And I highly recommend checking out a report by the University of Melbourne Queer Political Action Collective and more. For more advice, as well as Simona Castricum's work. And there's a really great resource on the Australian Building Codes Board. Deakin used to be, for many years, one of the only universities offering gender affirmation leave in some form, but now led by the NTU's Queer Unionist Network and allies, almost all have it in some form, as the NTU made it a national claim in the most recent round of bargaining. I attended one of the bargaining meetings to negotiate it at La Trobe, and I'm really proud of how colleagues persisted and managed to negotiate arguably one of the best gender affirmation clauses around the country after I left. And the University of Melbourne's clause is also really great, so I highly recommend looking at them. I'm almost finished. While some Trans 101 training is still needed, and I still find myself begging for a harm minimization approach often, to be taken to library work, I still think, there's enough out there now for self-education that these authors argue for, and there's a lot more research that is needed across all sector libraries in Australia and internationally. And so a summary of quick tips: question assumptions, biases, inequality, and existing ways of doing things. Be proactive, start small, collaborate, recognize the importance of intersectionality and lived experiences, embrace the messiness and learn from mistakes, engage with current research and build on that research with trans and gender diverse people and all LGBTIQ plus people. Join and get actively involved in your union, and remember to rest, which I need to remind myself of. Add some references and resources that you can use to build on this, and further contact for further queries and clarifications.
Thanks so much, Claire. That was such a great and insightful talk about what we can be doing in libraries to include more people. So next we welcome Nicole Gammy, Senior Learning Librarian, and Rhiannon Evans, Associate Professor, Head of Classics and Ancient History Program at La Trobe University, who will outline the process used to involve students in a third-year classics subject. Welcome, Nicole and Rhiannon.
Thank you very much, Tara. I'll just share my screen and we'll get started. So I'm going to set a little bit of a scene and then let Rhiannon talk about, provide a bit of subject context for this, and then I'll come back and explain how we involve students in particular in this initiative. So how this all came about Well, I just started at La Trobe towards middle of last year, and sort of in that break between semesters, got a query from Rhiannon around something completely unrelated. And being the definitely not being one of my areas of expertise, I'm an environmental scientist by training, not a classicist or anything in the humanities. Decided I better have a look at the subject to see whether I'd get a bit of enlightenment before talking to Rhiannon. So in my perusal of the LMS at the time, I noticed that the third assessment task required students to develop a digital project. And I went, yippee, because it was in plain English. So they're going to teach me some stuff, no doubt, because haven't got a lot of ideas I've never studied this at an higher level, this kind of content. And so I was really keen to see if we could potentially look at getting this published. So after answering Rhiannon's question, organising a Zoom chat to do that, I asked her whether she would be interested in seeing whether we could get the student works published. And that's where this all started. So I'll drop a link for this in the chat, and I'll let Rhiannon take over to explain a little bit about the context of the subjects before I come in and explain how we then involve students so they belong a bit more in the library to create this fabulous ebook.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, the subject is an unusual subject for a very conservative discipline of classics. It's kind of a meta subject, so it asks students to think about the discipline and some of the, as it says in brackets there, often troubling elements about classics, and the way particularly that it's been used politically in identity politics. So one of the major ways is to support ideas that white people are the superior race. So to instantiate very, very misleading ideas that the ancient Greeks and Romans were our ancestors if we are Northern Europeans. So one of the projects the students might do is to look at race in antiquity and to talk about how it's conceptualized entirely differently and it's not based on skin color. But they need to do that through a contemporary lens. So it might be political usage of that kind of imagery. It might be something like video games, where gender politics in particular often comes in. So video games in the ancient world might give you a particularly militarized or a certain version of masculinity that, again, Roman masculinity, if you look for it in adverts or memes in particular, it's often used to uphold this idea that men should be tough, men should be unemotional, and this is what the Romans were, therefore we can use them as a model. So a lot of this is about alt-right politics, and students kind of connect that to this project of undoing misinformation, so using their classical knowledge, and then writing about that in a way that can inform somebody who doesn't know anything about classics. So to unpick for them the way that this misuse is happening, perhaps without them even noticing, and to show them that this is actually the evidence. And then they also write a reflective essay, which is a little bit more academic to show what they've done and why they've done it. So we kind of thought this was a really good project for something we could unleash on the public to include them in it. And the library was so helpful with this, particularly Nicole, in all of the stages of it. It also means that students get an opportunity to think about ways of making their writing accessible, ways of dealing with copyright, and you know, kind of changing their language so that it can impart this information in a way that can include others. And we've had really good success with some of the really engaged students in the class. That's all I have to say, Nicole, if you want to take over again.
Thank you. So in order to get the ball rolling and to alleviate some of the challenges that you may face in this space, we set in place a few processes to ensure that there was no conflict of interest and that kind of thing. So as Rhiannon was the one to mark the assessment task, students were asked, before they knew what their marks were, it was a couple of weeks after the initiative was presented to them in class, were asked to submit an expression of interest. And I collected those to avoid any conflict of interest in terms of students feeling pressured or otherwise in terms of their marks, having to do something when Rhiannon was the one marking, would also note they're interested in being published. One of the challenges that we did face, or I certainly faced in, I guess, selling the idea to the students at the time, was we didn't have too much to show them about what it would look like. There is kind of a sister volume to this in some form in making public histories, and there are a number of student works published in that, but there was nothing in the classic space at that stage, which sort of, so having to convince the students to do that. The other challenge that we had, and this one's largely owing to infrastructure, was that because of the facilities used for this particular subject, we only had it was only ever going to be a small cohort, and being a third year subject, that sort of added to that challenge. But I had 6 brave souls who put their expressions of interest in, and I held on to those. I did mention how many people we had, but the names were withheld from other students, and also Rhiannon, until after the marks were released. And once we found that that was the case, then I approached the 6 to indicate that they'd met the criteria, which was getting a mark of greater than 75. Because the other thing that we were concerned about is we didn't want to have to be forced to publish everything. And I was also keen to avoid having any student appeals over the process that we used. So having both those components in place, a mark of 75, and they had to submit an expression of interest long before they knew things, helped us work through that. As part of the class presentation, I did talk about copyright, which Rhiannon mentioned earlier. And the way some of the students got around this was to actually use a podcast rather than actually showing any imagery, which then gets you around some of that copyright kind of componentry. So from that, the students were then asked to sign an author agreement, which basically allows the e-bureau at La Trobe to publish their works. They still retain the copyright for that. And also they went through a copy editing process and some peer review. So there was 2 rounds of peer review. The first one being the marks and the feedback that Rhiannon gave them when it was originally marked. And then we had a second round with somebody else providing some additional comment and feedback, making the content even stronger. The students were also asked to write a bit of a reflective piece, as was mentioned, to explain why they chose the subject, why they chose that particular topic within the subject to talk about, because there's quite a broad range of different things, and it's really quite interesting from that perspective. They're also asked to write a bio to provide a little bit of a picture about where they are and what their background is and what they're actually studying at the moment. So the book is getting very close to completion. We're hoping to see that it will be released in the next few weeks. So please, I'd love to get some feedback, and also you're more than welcome to share. But the aim of this was also give the students a chance for publishing. So in that sense, they've had, I guess, a couple of outcomes. The first being that now belonging to the library, if only it's a virtual ebook sitting on our shelf, but also they got a chance to go through, and they can then use this in resumes and work experience later on as well, because it might be some of the componentry that they use, certainly if they end up in the libraries and GLAM sector down the track. So that's pretty well all I have to say. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Caval for the opportunity to present this morning.
Thanks so much, Nicole and Rhiannon. Thanks for showcasing how you've fostered belonging through publishing. It's really exciting to hear. Next, we have Adrian Rodriguez, Coordinator, Library Concierge and Adobe Coaches from RMIT University Library, who will introduce us to a cross-team collaboration to upskill staff. Welcome, Adrian.
Great, okay. Okay, so belonging at RMIT Libraries. This is the knowledge exchange and integration of staff, new staff at RMIT Library. Oh, hang on. Why isn't it? There we go. Okay. We've done the acknowledgement of country, but I want to say I'm coming to you from the lands of the Eastern Kulin Nation here in Naarm today. All right, so this project we did was about renewing a sense of staff belonging post-COVID. RMIT, like other unis in Melbourne, had their library culture affected, work culture affected by strict COVID lockdown rules. Add to that a post-COVID reimagining, and the work culture at RMIT Library, the staff culture, was obliterated. What had been siloed was even more siloed when we came back to work in the hybrid model. Most staff worked from home, so there was no natural mingling. And except for the library concierge staff who were on campus throughout COVID and post-COVID. In addition, in 2023, RMIT phased out its information management program, and as a result, the student casual pool for the library concierge no longer had information management students. This had long been the natural entry point for new librarians at RMIT, but it was not going to be that any longer. So when I started this position as coordinator of library concierge in 2023, I had a new directive, and that was to hire part-time, part-year continuing staff that were early career librarians or library techs that come from outside of RMIT. All right, professional development needs. So with the professional development needs for the part-time, part-year staff, I was looking for ways to upskill the staff. And these were early career library staff, either diploma, grad dip, or master's students. And my big question, my big struggle was, absent a graduate or a cadet program, how to upskill and expose them to other areas. And I also had a desire to expose them to Ask the Library and collections work. Now, imagine I had no budget to cover staff vacancies, so this had to come free. All right. Okay. Now, from the monograph side, this monographs and digital collections team, which is part of the collections team, they have a huge project to add metadata and upload over 9,000 digital images. They had very little time to do this due to competing priorities. So just so you know, all the images from this presentation come from the collection that the library concierge staff worked on, and you can see the breadth of the collection. All right, this is one of the slides, the St. Bridget's Church in Brisbane. All of the metadata. So monographs, big project of digital images, as well as our desire for the library concierge desire to upskill staff, our needs sort of collided. Through the grapevine, Rachel and I discovered that we could help each other out. And so we began planning. It would be low risk for Rachel's team, and it would allow, low risk for my team and allow my team also to get a sense of mastery of new skills, and Rachel's also has low risk. So on to planning. Here in Library Concierge, I was focused on my staffing obligations and rostering. Monograph focused on determining what exactly the scope of the project would be and who would train them. So making the concierge feel like they belong. Each week, a concierge staff member would have a monographs and digital collections member, we'll call them MDC, staff member, train and support them. They would work alongside one-on-one with the staff members, so training was one-on-one. However, the MDC team didn't just leave the concierge member on the slide. They also showed them what else they were working on. If relevant, they could sit in on other kinds of training or other kinds of work or even meetings. So they became really part of the team for those few hours they were there a week. So what were the benefits? Working together. There was great feedback from both teams. I've got a couple of quotes here. Both Hannah and Leah were kind enough to give us some quotes. They gained new insights into the collection. What they noticed was they were able to understand how the library sort of worked with concierge, get a better idea of how the entire library, sort of the ecosystem of the whole library. The teaching or the training helped consolidate the monographs and digital teams collection's own knowledge. That's the best way to reinforce your own knowledge is to train others in how to do it. And they developed these skills with this training. Libraries can be quite siloed. This allowed us to break down the barriers. It also gave them a window into different work. Being situated in the office meant that in the collections office meant that concierge got a fuller picture of what goes on up in the collections area. They saw areas they might be interested in working in, which was great.
Hey, Adrian, just 5 minutes.
No worries, I'm nearly
Thanks.
halfway there. Another benefit was new connections. So concierge are working among the collection every day and working directly with the users to know their needs. And since this project, they have been comfortable in making suggestions for collections purposes or how that collections can improve the collection management for example, with call number improvements. And the Monograph's digital collection team feels comfortable asking questions to library concierge. It's just a lot friendlier, closer relationship, less siloed. We're working towards a one library culture. Work is less mysterious. What were our challenges? The biggest challenge was scheduling. With hybrid working, if a staff member was scheduled to be in on the day, which was Thursday, but they couldn't come in or they were sick, then we had to find an alternate day. It was a lot of toing and froing, and there were many times when both Rachel and I thought, my gosh, this scheduling is just taking up too much of our time. But we were both really committed because we could see the benefits to both of our teams. Overall, some concierge, Hannah in particular, has found ongoing work in collections. Everyone's got a better sense of belonging to the library. And as a result of this project, the cross-unit experience program at RMIT has been reinitiated as a formal tool to gain experience in other areas. Next steps. I'm looking to do a similar partnership between other areas of the library, in particular ASA Library and Archives. And coming up towards the end of the year, the Monographs team is also going to be doing an architecture slides project review and might have more work as well. So with regard to the other teams and the cross-unit experience, I also had this year a casual staff member who was seconded into one of the ongoing roles for a short time. He had shown interest in our discovery systems, and so I organized a cross-unit experience for him because at that point it was a formal program, and he was able to work with our Disco Sys team for about a month and gain some really valuable skills. So anyway, that's it for us. That's what we've done and how we created a sense of belonging within the library and its staff. And that's it.
Thanks, Adrian. That's really good. It's great to hear how your knowledge exchange was initiated and how it made everyone feel more connected and like they belonged in the library. Our next lightning talk comes in the form of a film about library displays and belonging from 2 library frontline services officers from the Federation University Library, Amy Sulmanis and Diana Swan. Amy will say a few words before we screen the film. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks so much for having us, and great to hear everyone's initiatives to foster belonging in so many different ways. And I wanted to say a big thanks to Claire for her comments at the start as well. So we're here in beautiful Wadawurrung country in Ballarat. We're frontline staff, and we've also got some of our frontline staff from across other campuses who you'll see in the film, so hello to them. And it's interesting because a lot of us haven't even met between the campuses, so doing this kind of project has been really amazing to bring us together as well. So a few quick words from me to frame what you're about to see. It's a tough time in the world. Our heads and our hearts are reeling. And at Fed Uni, we've had one of those years with job cuts, restructuring and streamlining. Librarians and library workers, being their awesome selves, push on with kindness, curiosity and the passion to help people. We're evolving as library folks do so well, with changing technology and directives from our institutions, but we are still humans. This film captures a moment in time where we celebrate this humanness, the humble and the handmade, and the boost in belonging that has given our staff at this time. You'll see all the fun. The joy in making connections between ourselves, our values, and the people we work with and serve every day. As our and other universities move towards less physical collections and more focus on e-resources, we'll continue to evolve with things like displays, and we'd also love to talk to all of you about how you're going with that evolution as well. But for now, enjoy this film. It's also got music by Ballarat musician Button Jar Canyon, and we hope you enjoy. Take it away.
Amy here from Federation University Libraries with my compadre Diana, and we are going to share a little bit of the magic that happens here across our campus libraries in the world of display. So we love bringing the sense of belonging to the libraries through these displays and bringing out values of inclusivity, diversity, curiosity and fun. Over the next 10 minutes, you're going to hear from some of the wonderful display creators and why they got involved, some of their favourite things they've made, and you will see a display evolve before your very eyes.
Displays aren't just about moving books, physical or e-versions. Displays play so many roles for the university, the creators, and the people who engage with them. They are a visual and physical way of connecting people to spaces, ideas, values, resources, and each other. What we showcase tells the story of what's important to our libraries and to their communities. Engaging with them creates a sense of belonging.
There's been some great ones all through the year. I think recently they've definitely ramped up with librariating across the campuses. I think we've seen some real community spirit, and the quality and sort of, sharing of ideas has improved it a lot.
I got involved with the display team because I think that displays in libraries are so important to people. It's a way for myself as a library worker to connect with people and share different messages and things I love, but also I'm also a researcher, PhD candidate, and I love looking at displays because it always provides you with that new level of inspiration. So it's great to be able to participate and be part of that bigger library story.
So I got on board the display team because I am just a creative person, I guess. The way I dress is a good example of that. So dressing the space kind of just came naturally.
I joined the display team because Berwick is kind of a blank slate, and it felt nice to maybe make a welcoming space for the students to come in, so they want to hang around, they want to be here, and they want to stay and borrow the books and study here.
So one of my favourite displays that I've done is for Ida Hobbit Day, which is International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, in case you didn't know. And I'm part of that rainbow family, so it was really nice to be able to bring a part of myself and my culture into the world and make people know that they belong into the library.
Okay, so this is the Gippsland display for half of the month of September. September is Biodiversity Month, which is why I chose to do this display. And yeah, I just really had a lot of fun doing this. I was quite in the zone.
My personal favorite is the open day one, which I haven't done, but I really loved the cutout of open day, and in general the entire library was very pretty, blue and sky blue and navy blue. So yeah, that one was my favorite.
Oh.
Do you guys enjoy seeing the displays as you're wandering through the library?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the library space really, really interesting and engaging, I think. And it just makes it seem a little bit more friendly, really.
Have you had any favourite displays you've seen?
There was one that was actually done for Open Day, actually, which was Kids Corner downstairs, and they had the xylophones.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Favourite display was probably the Olympic display because it was ever changing as new things happened within the Olympics. We changed out the pictures, so I kind of liked that it was constantly evolving, and it was a bit of fun.
I really liked working on the NAIDOC Week display, especially because we have a really great selection of children's books here in our library. So being able to go down and kind of play with those books and find books that are really contemporary and engaging and use the NAIDOC resources in a way that makes a lot of sense and connects people with children's books who may not interact with children's books very often. So that was really fun. And I also loved when we shared recipe books with students and shared our own recipes from home, because that food is love and you're kind of sharing what you love to make with other people. So I really love doing that as well.
My favourite display was the humble cookbook display, the remnants of which are here, the wonderful staff recipes that everyone contributed, as well as information on our Nourishment Nook, where students can get free food if they're experiencing food insecurity, and connections to community services that they might be able to get more help from. We did the display during the break, where students had more time, in theory, to develop the skill of cooking a nourishing meal on an extreme budget. And so we focused on easy to cook recipes as well as international food, where to connect with some of our international students who might have been feeling a little bit homesick. And there's nothing like a recipe as a conversation starter. This was my most interactive display. I had so many conversations about wonderful food and recipe swapping, and it was truly wonderful.
In particular, I love this space that we have, which is sort of a private staff space. It's a space that we work together in collaboratively, and this gave us the opportunity to share some of our collaborations and interests in that kind of collaborative private space. So we can kind of be invigorated and really enjoy each other's sort of private interests, or that we can share sort of ways of being, ways of belonging that we really feel connected to. So in particular, this is a very favourite pastime of ours. We use our whiteboard to put up interesting facts. Sometimes they can be fun facts that we just want to share. Other times it might be something really interesting about libraries and collecting spaces in particular. It really can be anything that anyone is interested in that they'd like to share with staff members in particular, to kind of help sort of share those sense of belonging and bonding with each other in a way that is quite personal to us.
I think I really enjoy doing displays in the libraries. I just feel like it will bring the library alive.
They make me feel really excited and joyful, because it's a great way to share things with people, and creating welcoming and safe spaces is something that not a lot of organisations think too much about, but in libraries we really spend a lot of time on that, and I think that's why I really love making displays and seeing displays, because it makes me feel really excited to welcome people into our space. And we can kind of put our own stamp on the space. And I like that, because then individual libraries in a big organisation can shine in their own ways.
If you see yourself reflected in your community, then you're more inclined to feel like you belong there. We're always trying to demonstrate how we're a safe space for everyone. So We're OK Day and We're at Purple Day and NAIDOC Week, Indigenous Literacy, like if you're seeing your own identity celebrated, reflected in the spaces that you go to, you can't help but feel like this is actually a comfortable space for me and somewhere where I belong.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all right.
Thanks so much, Amy and Diana, and all of your colleagues for making such a great movie. I love seeing all the displays in university libraries. I think it's really exciting. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thanks to our speakers for sharing these lightning talks and videos with us throughout the event. As a token of our appreciation, Caval has arranged for native trees to be planted through the organisation 15 Trees. If you have questions after the webinar, please email members@caval.edu.au and the team will forward your questions to the relevant person. While this was the final Belonging in Libraries webinar for now, please join Caval at the next capability building activity. In just under 2 weeks, on 22nd of October, Adele Walsh from the La Trobe University Library will guide us through building or rejuvenating our LinkedIn profiles. Later in the month, the annual Krieg seminar will bring you 3 virtual sessions, a cake competition and an in-person event between 29 and 31st of October. All the links you need have been entered into the chat. Thank you everyone for attending today. Have a great rest of the day.